Yantif. Some of you may have heard me before quoting my favorite scene from one of my favorite movies. In an exasperated but tender moment, Tevye peeks out from behind a curtain and he asks his wife of 25 years, "Do you love me?" Her response, "Do I what?" She recounts their life together. "Do I love him? For 25 years I've lived with him, fought with him, starved with him. For 25 years my bed is his. If that's not love, what is?" It's not usually what Hollywood love looks like. On screen, we're used to seeing love at first sight or love when the clock strikes 12 on New Year's Eve. It is fairy tale endings and grand finales. Love on screen is passionate and predictable, but not for Tevye and Golda. For them, love is the quiet, assumed backdrop of a life that is complicated by the twists and turns of family and country and, of course, tradition. If that's not love, what is? Talking about love doesn't really feel Jewish. Whether we're talking about romantic love or God's love, when it comes to religion, we associate love with Christianity, not Judaism. God is love, that phrase comes from the Gospel of John, not the book of Jonah. So as Jews, living in a predominantly Christian society, we too could look up after years of ritual and tradition and Torah and ask, "Do you love me?" In other words, what does it mean to show our love in a Jewish way? What does our tradition teach us about how to love each other with Jewish hearts? And how can this holy day, Yom Kippur, help us to be more loving? Yom Kippur teaches us to think back to the moments when we missed the mark, when we could have tried harder or done better. The previous edition of our prayer book used to call this sinning. We think back to the greatest chet, the greatest Israelite mistake. As Moses goes up the mountain to receive the word of Torah, the Israelites, in his absence, build a golden calf and begin to worship. When Moses finally makes his way back, he hears this great ruckus, and he wonders, is this the sound of war? Is it the sound of triumph? No, he realizes, none of these. This is the celebratory song of idol worship. And his anger flares. Moses takes the tablets of the commandments and hurls them down, shattering them at the foot of the mountain. And in his wrath, he burns that golden calf to the ground and forces the Israelites to drink its ashes. He rages, demanding that the people beg forgiveness. In this moment, Moses is overtaken with a frightening, all-consuming, violent fury. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha b'fi kol al, the ways we have wronged you by losing self-control. Once the anger has passed, God cradles Moses in the safety of a rock, and Moses offers a rewrite of the broken tablets with humility and with hope. And God lovingly reminds him of the nature of this divine relationship. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum v'chanun, Erech Apayim v'rav chesed v'emet, Notzer chesed la'alafim, Noseh avon v'fesha, v'chata'a v'nakeh. Adonai, Adonai, compassionate, gracious, endlessly patient, loving and true, showing love to the 1,000th generation, forgiving evil, defiance, and wrongdoing, granting pardon. We chant these words every time we take out the Torah on the High Holy Days, not once, but twice in a row. You can listen for it tomorrow morning. And in doing so, we remember, like the Israelites at the foot of the mountain, Al chet shechatanu, we too have missed the mark. And our machzor reminds us, Notzer chesed la'alafim, God has promised to show love to the 1,000th generation. That's us. We are the 1,000th generation since this great mistake, and in love, God forgives our sins for our wrongdoings, for all of the many missed marks that we recite tonight. So I ask again then, what does it mean to show our love in a Jewish way? What does our tradition teach us about how we can love one another with Jewish hearts? And how can this holy day, how can Yom Kippur help us to be more loving? We are made in the image of God. We too have the capacity to act with love to the 1,000th generation, to show chesed even in the face of misdeeds and wrongdoings, to do as the psalmist suggests and build our world with acts of chesed, to build this world from love. A story from my first year in rabbinical school. My teacher, Rabbi Richard Levy of blessed memory, taught his students on the Los Angeles campus of the Hebrew Union College how to stay calm on the congested LA freeways. As we drove to our internships, we would sometimes be stuck bumper to bumper for hours. This kind of confining traffic is enough to make anyone enraged. And in our rush, or our exhaustion, or our frustration, we might start to drive aggressively. We might lay on the horn. We might mutter insults at strangers who can't see or hear us. The ways we have wronged you with offensive speech. Rabbi Levy's advice: when you feel that rage start to take over, glance in the rearview mirror and notice the eyes of the person in the car behind you. And remember, that driver is stuck in that very same traffic. And that person too was created b'tselem Elohim. Every single car on the road represents another soul created in the image of God. Each vehicle carries a person like you, a person like me, with a story and a destination and a reason for traveling. To see the holiness in the face of a stranger in the rearview mirror and allow our hearts to soften. This is chesed. If that's not love, what is? Another story. Gertruda Babelinska was a nanny who lived in Warsaw in the 1930s. She worked for a wealthy Jewish family, and over the course of many years, the family endured times of personal tragedy and hardship, and also some beautiful times of healing and hope. And Gertruda stayed with the family through it all, caring not only for their young son, Michael, but also Lydia, his mother, who was not well. Life, of course, changed for them dramatically when the Germans invaded Poland. Mother and son were left alone with no money, nowhere to live, no way to stay safe. Gertruda, the nanny, helped them make the difficult and dangerous choice to flee. And the three made it to Vilna as refugees, where tragically Lydia died soon after. Gertruda, the nanny, was left to care for the young boy and honor his mother's wishes to bring him to Israel. Gertruda was resourceful. She obtained false papers, found ways to make a small living, and went to great lengths to hide Michael's true identity. And when the war ended, she kept her promise. She joined the throngs of Jewish immigrants trying to travel to Israel. It took many attempts. The boats that they traveled on illegally were sent away on more than one occasion, forcing them into camps for refugees again and again. They finally arrived in Israel in 1948, and Michael was able to grow up in the Holy Land, proudly Jewish, the son of a mother and a nanny who both risked their lives for his own. It wasn't the similarities, but the differences between Gertruda and Lydia that brought them closer together. It would have been easy for Gertruda to lean into the privilege that she was afforded in a time where politically driven hate forced wedges between most people. But she chose to protect a child and kept a promise to his mother, to whom she owed nothing. How many of us would do the same? Al chet shechatanu lefanecha be'imutz halev, for the ways we have wronged you by hardening our hearts. For Gertruda Babulinska, an innate sense of chesed for the people who had shown chesed to her, blurred the lines of class, of origin, religion, and privilege. It is why she is honored at Yad Vashem as one of the righteous among the nations. Gertruda's love for Michael and Lydia was stronger than her own safety, than her own fears. If that's not love, what is? One more story. This one is the most difficult. As you all know, just under a year ago, on a Saturday morning last October, a person filled with anti-Semitic hatred opened fire at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. 11 people were murdered, 7 were injured, and we were all affected. The shooter was among the 7 injured, and as he was wheeled into the emergency room, he shouted, "Death to all Jews," with no remorse, no regret. He was still raging with his message of hate. And when we remember how we felt reading the news that day, when we imagine for a moment that we were there, that we could have been there, we feel hate too. This act of hate is personal to us, and it awakens in each one of us, even the most loving among us, a reflected flicker, or perhaps a raging flame of hate. And hate has a way of breeding more hate. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha behirhur halev, the ways we have wronged you through our innermost thoughts. The nurse who treated the shooter made headlines. His name is Ari Mahler, and he's Jewish. Like me, his dad is a rabbi. Our parents were actually classmates. Like me, like so many of us, he grew up going to Nifty events and Jewish summer camp. He is a proud product of our reform movement. And a little less than a year ago, his Facebook post went viral. Ari Mahler wrote, "Here I am, the Jewish nurse that cared for the Pittsburgh shooter. I've watched them talk about me on CNN, Fox News, Anderson Cooper, PBS, and the local news stations. I've read articles mentioning me in the New York Times and Washington Post. The fact that I did my job, a job which requires compassion and empathy over everything, is newsworthy to people because I'm Jewish. I didn't say a word to him about my religion. I chose not to say anything to him the entire time. I wanted him to feel compassion. I chose to show him empathy. I felt that the best way to honor his victims was for a Jew to prove him wrong. Besides, if he finds out I'm Jewish, does it really matter? The better question is, what does it mean to you? Love. That's why I did it. Love as an action is more powerful than words, and love in the face of evil gives others hope. It demonstrates humanity. It reaffirms why we're all here. The meaning of life is to give meaning to life, and love is the ultimate force that connects all living beings. I could care less what the person who shot up a synagogue thinks, but you, the person reading this, love is the only message I wish to instill in you. If my actions mean anything, love means everything. Ari Mahler did not even speak to his patient that day. He didn't justify his message or even forgive his actions. He just did his job. And he showed the world what chesed means. He looked the sin of embodied anti-Semitism in the eye and proved that love is stronger. That love, chesed, means more. In the presence of that real, terrifying, awful hate, he resisted the urge to respond in kind. And he held that hateful life in his hands. And with incredible, unfathomable restraint, he acted with the chesed that we strive for on Yom Kippur. The chesed that God teaches us by showing love to the next generation of Israelites, even when we, have done wrong. Ari Mahler, the Jewish nurse, shows us, when given a choice to love or to hate, choose chesed. Let this be the message that endures. And if that's not love, what is? Could you do it? Could you choose love? Could you choose chesed? Can you choose chesed when you disagree with a friend about an important social issue? Can you still look your colleague in the eye when they represent a passion that disturbs you to your core? Can you live in this world, this complicated and difficult world, and be a person who consistently chooses chesed? On Yom Kippur, God chooses us, despite our flaws, again and again. And on Yom Kippur, we too face this choice, to choose ourselves and one another in love. This is our chance to become people who recognize holiness in strangers, even while stuck in traffic. It is our chance to recognize holiness in different people who come from different places and believe in different ideas. It is our chance to build a world from love, even when we fear that hatred will prevail. It is our chance to remember that if our actions mean anything, then love means everything. Tevye and Golda teach us that love of family, love of community, love of tradition will be our strength in times of hate. And today, while different, is really no different at all. Chesed isn't just a feeling. It isn't just the work of our hearts. It is also the work of our minds and the work of our hands. And it is the hard, enduring work of our lives. Like my rabbi, Richard Levy, we choose chesed when we recognize the face of God in the rearview mirror. Like Gertruda Babelinska, the righteous Gentile, we choose chesed when we put people before class and status and race and religion. Like Ari Mahler, the Jewish nurse, we choose chesed when we extend kindness beyond the boundaries, when we defiantly and rebelliously and courageously show compassion, when we teach the world what love really means. May we choose chesed tonight, and may our love too extend to the 1,000th generation. Because if that's not love, what is?